Good evening. The time is now 7 o'clock. The Wayzata Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting for Monday, December 8th, 2025 will please come to order. Will the clerk please take the roll call?
Heidi Cater,
Here.
Sheila Pryor, here. Sarah Johansson,
Here.
Horace Bende,
Here.
Valentina Ayers,
Here.
Dan Ginestra,
Here.
Milan Sahoni,
Present.
Chase Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Please rise to recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, tonight the audience will have two opportunities to address the board. The first will be during the public comment on truth in taxation. The second will be the regularly scheduled audience opportunity to address the school board. If you wish to speak during either or both, please fill out a form placed at the back of the room and hand it over to our district admin assistant, Amy, sitting to my right. I will elaborate more a little bit on each of them when we reach that point, that item on the agenda. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda items. Consent agenda items are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which event the item will be removed as a consent agenda item and addressed. The consent agenda items are listed in the materials. The recommended action is to approve the agenda and the consent agenda items. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
Valentina Ayers,
Yes.
Dan Ginestra,
Yes.
Sarah Johansson,
Yes.
Horace Bende,
Yes.
Sheila Pryor, yes. Heidi Cater,
Yes.
Milan Sahoni.
Yes. We have an agenda. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a presentation on truth in taxation by Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Trevor Peterson. Trevor?
Good evening, Chairperson Sahoni, members of the board, Dr. Anderson. Welcome to a snowy evening out there. Tonight, as Mr. Sahoni said, we are here to present the Truth in Taxation presentation. I do have Jack Stearns, our Director of Finance, to help me present it tonight. So just a reminder that each year school districts are required by law to hold a public hearing for truth in taxation. I do acknowledge that this one is a little bit lengthier than we've seen in the past. I just think it's a good opportunity tonight to take a little bit of a deeper dive than maybe we have in the past. Just talk about a few things, some of the long-term things that we're planning as a school district to help frame that a little bit too and add some context as to some of those discussions that we're having. So also want to note that this presentation is not real easy to present in a linear format, so it might be ping-ponging around a little bit. So I would just suggest then that any questions you might have, just wait till the end because I'll probably get to it sooner or later throughout the presentation. So with that, we'll get rolling. Minnesota state law does require that we are to hold a public meeting between November 25th and December 29th. It must be held at 6 p.m. or later. And it may be part of a regular scheduled meeting. That is a change. I suppose it's been about 10, 12 years now where it used to have to be at a separate meeting. That is now no longer the case. But we must allow for public comments during that meeting. And then we may adopt the final levy at the same meeting, which we are planning to do so tonight. And I think that has been the history of this district as well. It also needs to include a presentation of the current year budget. In this case, that's a 25-26 budget. And then we'll dive into the proposed property tax levy for payable 2026. For the agenda, we will start with looking at a background information on some property tax levies and school funding, just kind of how it all fits together. Look at our district's budget. the proposed tax levy for payable 2026, and then allow public comments at the end. Starting with the background on property tax levies. So each owner of taxable property pays property taxes to various taxing jurisdictions. So that's the county, a city, township, school district, or special districts in which the property is located. Each taxing jurisdiction sets their own levy, often based on limits in state law. The county eventually sends the bills, collects taxes from the property owners, and then distributes funds back to those taxing jurisdictions. In the Minnesota Constitution, there is an article, Section 1, that says Uniform System of Public Schools, basically saying that the government will make such provisions by taxation or otherwise to secure a thorough and efficient system of public schools throughout the state. And part of that really dedicates then some school funding. So public school districts are funded by the federal government, state government, local fees, and local taxpayers through property taxes, the largest of which is the state of Minnesota, the largest source of funding. State funding is highly regulated. The state does set formulas which determine the revenue, the tax policy for local schools, the maximum authority property tax levy. The districts may levy less, but not more than the authorized maximum. And the state also does authorize school boards to submit referendums for operating and capital needs to voters for approval. The levy system is very complex, so it's comprised of about 39 pages of levy calculations. It's calculated on two property bases, referendum market value and net tax capacity. Those terms we will hear plenty about during this presentation and the difference between the two. It contains 4 different funds: the general fund, community service fund, debt service fund, and then the OPEB debt service fund, the latter of which is only applicable to not every district. We do not have the OPEB debt service fund in our levy. There are about 50 different revenue categories, either broken down by aid or levy, and it's calculated on 5 different bases: adjusted pupil units, otherwise known as enrollment, categorical expenditures, district population, tax rate, and property tax abatements. And again, we'll get into that a little bit. I think despite the complexity of this, again, I don't want to use that as a reason to not dive into it. I do think it's important to educate, provide some information on how some of these things are calculated. And again, we'll do the best we can to not get too deep into that, but also leave here with a better understanding of some of those calculations. As a general overview for timeline for all district, the proposed levy is certified in September. And then the final levy is certified in December. This is true for all school districts in Minnesota. The payable 2026, so we'll hear that term a lot too. What that means is it's collected from the taxpayers in the calendar year of 2026. So the first half of that is due May 15th. Second half payment is due October 15th, 2026. This levy revenue for school district provides revenue for the fiscal year 26-27, which does not start until July 2026 and runs through June 2027. A little bit of a closer look as to how this levy timeline is maybe more specific to our district. So you can see on September 10th, we did get the first run of our levy from MDE. September 22nd is when we brought the preliminary levy to the school board for approval. And you will see a month later, on October 22nd, is when we actually got the final levy limit report from MDE. Ideally, you will not have any changes from when the board approves the preliminary levy to when we come forward in December with the final levy. Unfortunately, that was not the case this year, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but we did have some changes from our preliminary levy that was approved in September. That is not unique. That is not, that does happen quite a bit. It just makes it a little bit harder to present, but we'll dive into what those changes are. November 11th to 24th, every property tax owner should have received their proposed property tax statement in the mail from the county. That brings us to tonight. We'll have the public hearing on the proposed levy and also then ask the board to approve the levy later on. In the spring of 2026, the county will mail those the property tax statements to all property owners. And then again, with those payments due May 15th and October 15th. The levy cycles are different for school districts. So I talked about our fiscal year begins July 1st and runs through June 30th each year. So the payable 2026 taxes provides revenue for our 26-27 fiscal year. But for cities, counties, and townships, taxes payable in 2026 actually provide revenue for their calendar year budget for so their January through December fiscal year of 2026. So a little bit different. Here's what that looks like in a graph format. So the black in this case would be the legislation from January through May. The state of Minnesota met to see if there would be any funding changes to school district levies. All of that tax levy decision then occurs between August and December. And you can see the collection of the levy then for cities, counties, and counties, and townships is all in the calendar year of 2026, where we have a lag in that budget year from July of June 26-27. Look, we'll start by, when we dive into the property tax levy here, there'll be four things we look at, really the levy calculation, some notable levy changes. We'll do some levy comparisons to our neighboring and comparable districts, and then what that means as an impact on taxpayers. Again, adding to that complexity of not only property taxes, but also school district taxes. There are really three key variables when we start talking about property tax levies. One of them being the estimated market value of each property. The other being the property classification. So if it's residential homestead, is it commercial, is it agriculture? And then the total taxes levied by the taxing jurisdiction. So all of that kind of gets put into a blender, spits out what the property taxes do for each taxing jurisdiction, and that gets added to each property tax statement. There are 6 key steps in this process, and I think it's important to note that the school board or school district only controls one of these steps. So the first step is the city or county assessor then determines the estimated market value and property classification for each parcel of property. For example, again, I talked about residential homestead. Really, what is that estimated value for that property, which is the main key driver to all property taxes. Step 2 then is the legislature sets those formulas for tax capacity and school district levy limits. So when we talk about tax capacity, that varies by classification. I added a few on the notes over there. So for example, residential and agriculture or homestead, if you up to $500,000 of your market value, that's taxed. The tax capacity of that is 1%. Anything over that is 1.25. Commercial or industrial is 1.5% for up to 150,000, and then 2% anything over that. And again, there are 46 different property classifications. We won't talk about all of them, but some of the others include like post-secondary housing, qualifying golf courses, private airports, bed and breakfasts. There's a lot of them, and they all have their unique tax capacity calculations. Step 3 then is the county auditor calculates the tax capacity for each parcel of property, as well as the total tax capacity for the entire school district. Step 4, Minnesota Department of Education calculates those levy limits for each school district, and these have their own set of calculations too. A lot of them are based on a per pupil basis, but some of them are a little bit different. For example, operating capital revenue is based on age and square footage of district-owned buildings. Transportation sparsity is based on the attendance area and number of square miles per resident student. Equity is based on the gap between the 5th and 95th percentile of a metro district per pupil revenue. So those are just a few examples of the complexity of this calculation and how every funding category really has some different calculation attached to it. Step 5 is the only one that the school board or school district has any control over, and that's adopting the proposed levy in September, and then after the public hearing, the final levy in December. And then after that is done, the county takes what the school district's total property tax levy is and divvies that out to all of the property owners in the district. So generally speaking, and again, generally speaking, we'll speak on a lot of averages or there are plenty of cases where there are circumstances that vary, but I think it's pretty safe to say that if the district's total tax levy is about 25%, just as an example of what our total net tax capacity is, a property owner might expect to pay 25% of what their property tax capacity is. And again, that's just a pretty basic rule of thumb. It's not exact, but you could come pretty close to an estimate using that rationale. This is a sample of the notice mailed mailed to every property owner between November 11th and November 24th. It does have a lot of contents on there. It talks about what your market value of the property is. Also, if you have any homestead exclusions, what your taxable market value is, property classification, whether or not that property is subject to school building bond aid credits. And then that's all based on a comparison of prior year. And then it indicates what the time and place of public meetings for each taxing jurisdiction is. So a couple things to note on this. The key thing to this, again, is not only the taxable market value or the estimated market value, but also the property classification. That is a huge driver in this. So it's important for property owners to take a look at that to make sure that what they think their property is classified at truly is classified correctly. If they don't believe it is, there is an appeal process. This gets mailed out in March, and it talks through what options there are. There really are two options for a property tax owner to appeal not only their value, but also their classification. One of those would be to go to the, the Boards of Appeal and Equalization, or also Minnesota Tax Court law. So those are your two options. They do depend on the time of year, so both options might not be available at any time during the year. So when a property owner gets this and they want to go through the appeal process, it's important for them to call the county assessor to get more information about how to go about that. Not the school district, the county assessor's office. Information on school funding. So we'll dive into that a little bit. Going back to 2002, 2003, so about 23 years ago or so, I don't think it's any secret that the general education revenue formula for school districts has not kept up with inflation. So for fiscal year 24-25, we did have an increase of 2% or $143 per student. For this current year of 25-26, there was another increase of 2.74% or $200, which is equal now to $7,481 per pupil. In order for that to have kept pace with inflation, there would have been another $1,420 or 19% added onto that, resulting in an allowance of $8,901. And just to put that in a little context too, that would result in roughly an additional $20.5 million in annual revenue for general education state aid for the district. There is that in a graph format, so you can see that the blue is the inflation rate, had they started at the same point in 2002, 2003. And the yellow or gold is actually what has happened with the general education formula. It's important to note that there is a correlation between levy and budget, but it's not always what you think. So a percentage change in a tax levy does not always include or does not always indicate that there's going to be a change to the revenue budget. So if our tax levy goes up 6%, our revenue does not necessarily go up 6%, because some of these levy revenues are offset by a decrease in state aid, or some levy decreases are offset by increases in state aid too. So important to note that it's not necessarily additional revenue when we see a levy increase. Biggest reason for that is what's called equalization aid. Again, there's that term referendum market value. Equalization aid is based on a district's referendum market value per resident student. So generally what that means is the higher that number is, that indicates that you are a property-rich district. And again, MDE kind of sets makes value judgment on who pays what. So these formulas are set that if you have a higher referendum market value per resident student, you are going to get less equalization aid and therefore have more burden put upon your local levy. Again, this leads to limited ability to receive equalization aid when you are a property-rich district. So this graph, again, shows what some of our neighboring and/or comparable districts are. So we will do a lot of comparisons with Bloomington, Eastern Carver County, Eden Prairie, Edina, Minnetonka, Orono, Osseo, St. Louis Park, just so we can kind of get a flavor of how we compare to some of those districts. This is that referendum market value per resident student graph. Wayzata is in the blue. I took all the comparable averages in gold, and state averages will be in the black bar. All of these will be consistent through the rest of the presentation, so you can kind of point to what that looks like. This is the same information, just sorted highest to lowest. So you can see that Wayzata it certainly calculates to be a property-rich district, which then puts a lot of burden for equalization aid to be more on the local levy. Why that's important is because there are certain aid categories then that make up what's called general education aid. So for general education aid, this would include not only the basic formula, but things like gifted and talented, other aid that really makes up that general education aid. So we sit at about $8,174 per student, and this was from 2023-24, so it's a little dated. That's just the most recent data that we have from the statewide averages, because 24-25 is not finalized yet for every district. So this is that information then sorted lowest to highest. You can see that we are the second lowest. We receive the second lowest state aid per student of these districts that are listed here. Well below comparable average, well below state average. Taking that general education aid and then adding in some of the other categorical state aids, such as special education aid, literacy incentive aid, pupil support, library aids, for example, we get what our total state aid per student is. And again, that's sorted alphabetically. The second one is sorted lowest to highest. So of the total state aid per student, we are third lowest of this collection of districts. And again, well below comparable average and state weighted average. So really what that means is, of these 5 categories, so operating capital, local optional revenue, equity, transition, and referendum, those are the 5 funding categories that are subject to an aid levy split based on that referendum market value per resident student formula that I talked about earlier. So again, the higher number it is, the more levy you're going to have. The less it is, the more equalization aid you're going to have. So you can see, of the roughly $45 million that we have in our levy for these 5 funding categories, we get less than $1 million of that in the form of state aid. And the rest of it is burdened upon our taxpayers and local levy. So that's about 2.1% of this revenue is required to be paid through our levy. How that compares with other districts, you can see it's pretty consistent. It's actually really, these districts are all kind of in the same boat, but you can see how that compares to the state average, which is about 9.1%. So again, not only us, but our neighbors do find it that there's heavy burden placed upon our taxpayers to cover these 5 funding categories that are based on that calculation. All right, I will turn it over to Jack for a little bit. He can talk a little bit about our 25-26 budget.
Thank you, Trevor. School Board, Dr. Anderson. Good evening. Let's talk some budget. Before diving into the 25-26 preliminary budget, which was approved in June of 2025, I just wanted to talk through the various funds that we have at our district. First is the general fund. These are funds that are for general operating costs, such as teacher salaries, administrative costs, supplies, materials, and general building maintenance. Next up is food service and the community service funds, 02 and 04. All the costs which are related to these funds are related to the program. So for food service, it's all the nutrition program fees and expenses for school lunches and things like that. Community service is the same for the various programs within community ed, such as school readiness, adult basic education, and school age care. Our next fund is the building construction fund. All the funds associated with this are for construction of buildings and the sales of bonds. Fund 7 is our debt service fund, and this is where we pay our principal and interest payments on any of our outstanding debt. Next up is Fund 20. This is our internal service fund. As you all know, Wayzata is a self-funded district for internal services, so all of our self-insured health and dental insurance plan payments go through that fund. And then finally is Fund 45, which is our OPEB trust fund. And these are funds used to pay for eligible post-employment benefit costs for district employees. So this slide is just showing the overall 25-26 board-approved preliminary budget. As you can see, it's broken out by fund for both revenue and expenditures. One thing I want to note is that there's a little asterisk for number 1. That is for the LTFM adjustments, which are part of our budget. So that's part of the reason why the revenues are at 304 million. So there are those LTFM adjustments in there. But overall, as you can see, this is our total funds for all of our various funds for our budget for revenue and expenses. So our revenue budget is sitting at just over 304 million, and then our expenditure budget is sitting at 310 million in total. This next slide is showing the fund balance. So the first two is the 7/1/2024 fund balance. This was audited and approved, and then there's the 6/30/2025 fund balance, which is has been audited by LB Carlson, our auditors. And then we have our projected fund balance for 6/30/2026, so next year. So this is just us showing where we landed at the end of 6/30/2025, our revenue expenditures for our proposed revenues for and expenditures for 2025-2026, and then where we think we'll end up at the end of this next fiscal year, so 25-26 fiscal year. So at the end of by June 30th, 2026, if everything goes as we plan with the budget, we expect that our fund balance will be sitting at 110 million. So this first graph here is showing all funds budgeted for revenue. So there's that $304 million again for the total budget. And this is just showing the breakout by fund and what percentage of our total revenue comes from each fund. General fund is sitting right around 75%. It's followed by our internal service fund at 7.62%. And then we have our food service, community service, debt service, and our OPEB fund. So this is just a graph to kind of show split up of all funds for our revenue budget. And then similar here, this is another budget. This is our expense budget, all funds, which is also showing the split on the pie graph there. General fund is still, again, at the 76%, and then it goes out by the various different funds and their percentage of total expenditures for the year. This graph is showing just our general funds. Now we're just kind of honing in on just the general fund. Our total revenue budget for 25-26 for general fund was 231 million. So this is kind of showing where that revenue comes from. State aid is 62.68% of that budget, with property taxes being 32.58%. And then we have our federal aid and our other revenue as well in there. But really, the state aid and the property taxes are those largest pieces that we receive our revenue from for the general fund. So this is the expenditures for just the general fund. Our general fund budget for expenses were 237 million. And as you can see, salaries and wages, employee benefits are making up the two largest pieces of that pie. Together, they make up about 72% of our total expenditure budget. Following that would be our purchase services, our capital expenditures, and then supplies, materials, and then other expenditures are a very small percentage. And this is just looking at our general fund budget for 25-26 just a little bit differently. Instead of looking at it by object, we're now looking at it by program code. So where the expenses are actually being paid. So as you can see, the largest portion is that elementary and secondary regular instruction, and then the various other areas such as special education instruction, instructional support services, pupil support, operations and maintenance, admin, staff, and then the fiscal and other fiscal cost. So just a few highlights for our finance team, which we're really proud of, is first, we are AAA bond rating with Moody's since 2008. This is the best possible rating a school district can achieve. We are only one of 3 districts in the state that have this rating, and then we are also only one of 101 districts in the nation that have this rating. So that's something to be really proud of. Next up is that this is our 40, well, once the audit is complete in 2025, once that's finally approved, that'll be another year. But for now, we are still at 41 consecutive years of having the ASBO award, which is a certificate of excellence for our financial reporting here at Wayzata. And then third, now that our 25 audit is wrapped up, we did receive a clean audit opinion this year for our audit. So I meant there was no deficiencies in our internal controls. There's no instances of legal compliance or non-compliance that is reported to the Government Auditing Standing Board, and there was no findings based on the testing of the district's compliance with Minnesota's laws and regulations. So some really awesome highlights for our team, and I know everyone's been working really hard to make sure that we keep these things true and keep the Wayzata standard high, so we're really proud of these things.
Thanks, Jack. All right, hopping back into levy. Now we'll start looking at all of those calculations. What does it really mean for our district? So we started with kind of a high overview, and now I'll look at what that really means for Wayzata Public Schools. So our proposed payable 2026 tax levy is an increase from payable 2025 of about $5.9 million. This does represent a 6.13% increase. Again, that is a little bit higher than what we showed in the and that's a September preliminary levy, and we'll talk about that in a little bit on the following slide. So I think it's worth noting that we do acknowledge that the 6.13 is definitely higher than it has been in recent years by a little bit, and also a little bit higher than what we have seen from neighboring districts. But I think it's important too to look at a multi-year string too, because there's a lot of prior year adjustments that kind of work their way through. So we also have experienced significant enrollment growth, and a lot of these funding categories are based on enrollment too. So I just want to take a few moments, and you'll see this later, that really how that 6.13 relates to our other neighboring districts and statewide too. There's a lot of numbers here. I won't go through it, but this breaks down all of the levy funding categories. So I mentioned earlier there's about 50 of them. Not all levy funding categories are applicable to every district. We receive about half of them. So these are broken out by the 3 funds that we talked about: the general fund, the community service fund, and then the debt service fund. So our general fund is about a 5.87% increase. You'll see about a 5.78% increase for community service fund, and a 7.21% increase for debt service. Some of those adjustments that I talked about, we've had some large adjustments in previous years for LTFM. So some of these levy funding categories, if you remember, are based on actual expenditures. Well, LTFM is one of those categories. So we as a district put in an LTFM budget, what we expect to spend for long-term facilities maintenance. Should we overspend or underspend that targeted amount, a subsequent year levy is adjusted to account for that. So in this case, we did experience some significant LTFM adjustments from prior years. Most of this related to the COVID years. Mostly just because it got to a point where it was very difficult to find contractors that were available to do work. A lot of projects just got delayed. So in this slide, what I wanted to do is both for payable 25 as well as payable 26, a significant portion of this increase from last year is because of this LTFM adjustment. So had these LTFM adjustments not taken place or not been there, last year in payable 2025, there was an LTFM adjustment, a negative adjustment of $8.8 million. This year, there was a negative adjustment of only 4.2. So right off the bat, you're looking at a $4.6 million increase just because of these adjustments, for no other reason other than we just did not spend the money that was estimated based on a number of things. So for the general fund, taking out those LTFM adjustments, we actually would have experienced a 0.15% decrease on our levy for payable 2026. And if you look at all funds, that 6.13% increase would have only been 1.28%. And again, those things do even out over time. It can certainly go the other way at certain times, but I think it was important just to highlight this because this was definitely a more significant adjustment than you will normally see on any given year. Again, with another overview of the proposed property tax levy. So this first one in blue is by truth in taxation category. Those are actually the categories that property tax owners will see on their property tax statement. It's voter approved levy and it's other local levies. So the voter approved levies and other local levies, the voter approved levies increased 4.09%. One might say, well, how can that be? The voters didn't approve any changes. Again, some of those levy categories that were voter approved had to do with the technology levy, which is based on the tax capacity of the district. As that increases, so does the levy. So again, some of those things are set in statute that automatically increase or decrease based on other things. The bottom one then is by tax base. So there's certain funding categories that are based on a referendum market value and some that are based on net tax capacity. So you can see the split, the difference there. Definitions and some valuation data. So market value is the property valuation that's established by the county through the assessment process. Referendum market value is the tax base for operating referendum, local optional equity and transition revenue. So those four funding categories are based on the referendum market value, and I'll explain why that's a difference in the next slide or two. The net tax capacity then is the tax base for debt service, long-term facilities maintenance, OPEB operating capital, and many others. So of those 50 levy categories or so, only 4 of them are based on referendum market value and the rest of them are based on net tax capacity. And then you have your adjusted net tax capacity, which is the calculation that includes a sales ratio, and I'll explain what that means too. A lot of numbers here, I'm not going to go through them, but what this looks at is the market value, referendum market value, net tax capacity, and adjusted net tax capacity from the year 2013 through 2024. And all this illustrates is really the property growth that we have experienced across the district. And you can see all of those really increase at a similar rate. There's not going to be much variation. So if your market value goes up 20%, you're not going to see a 4% increase in your referendum market value. So they're all going to be about the same. Here that is in a different format, just a bar graph. And again, that illustrates what I just said too. They all increase about the same. And this just looks at the last 5 years. So digging into the referendum market value a little bit. So why this is important. You have some properties that are exempt from paying those taxes or those levies that are calculated on referendum market value. Qualifying agriculture, and qualifying agriculture excludes house, garage, and 1 acre. So when you hear of a house, garage, and 1 acre, that is actually considered residential homestead, even though it might be on an agricultural property. And most seasonal recreational properties. So those are the 2 big ones. Qualifying agricultural land and buildings and seasonal recreation, those 2 property classifications are exempt from paying taxes on those 4 referendum market value funding categories that I talked about. Our district has much lower than average exempt properties, so qualifying agriculture and seasonal rec, you can see makes up about 0.3% for agriculture and 1.4% of our total district market value for seasonal recreation. So that allows us as a district to not have to worry about what kind of taxes are going to impact certain taxpayers and what aren't. It's actually helps us, gives us a little bit more options as to what we might have when it comes time to talking about future long-term funding mechanisms. And then all other funding categories are spread on the net tax capacity. Talking a little bit about the Ag to School Building Bond Credit. So this was passed into the law June 2017. It was a phased-in approach. So when it was first passed, it was 40%. Now it's up to 70%. So what that means is qualifying agricultural properties receive a 70% credit from the state of Minnesota for all voter-approved building bond referendums. So that at the time, that was both existing as well as new. So this essentially says that if you have qualifying agriculture, and let's say you were due to pay $1,000, for example, just for the debt service of the building bonds for our taxes, the state is actually going to pay $700 of that, and the property owner would only pay $300 of that. So that shows up on your property tax statement. The district then receives that in the form of state aid from the state to replace the levy that does not come from the county. Again, we don't have a lot, so that only equates to about $11,000 for our district. So not a big thing, but certainly if you see some districts with a lot of agricultural land in southwest Minnesota, this is a big deal. And maybe just a little bit more context on that. The reason this was put into place is you were seeing in 15, 16, 17, a lot of those districts that had a lot of seasonal agricultural property or qualifying agricultural property were having a hard time passing referendums because of the impact and how quickly agricultural land and buildings were increasing their property value. So this helped with that a little bit. For voter-approved levies, this includes 3 levy categories. So when you see that on your property tax statement, that includes all of those levies that were approved by the voters in the form of operating referendum, debt service, otherwise known as building bonds, or capital projects / technology referendums. For us, we call that our technology levy. You can also call it a capital projects levy. They are one and the same. It's just a matter of what you identify that you're going to use that revenue for. We use that as our technology levy. So you can see what our operating referendum is. Again, there is no increase to that other than what our increase in enrollment is, as well as the inflationary factor that we have on our operating referendum. And then we have a debt service of about $16 million. That's to pay the principal and interest payments of our existing debt. And then we have our technology levy that equates to about $12.4 million. So the voter approved levy it makes up about 61.55% of our total levy, and that increased 4.09% from the previous year. And then all of the other local levies, I said it was just that. It was everything else. So there's that list. This makes up 38.45% of our total levy, and it was an increase of 9.57%. Most of that being with the LTFM adjustments from the previous year. Here is a summary of that based on those 5 different calculations. So in the dark blue, you have those funding categories that are based on adjusted pupil units or enrollment. In the dark gold, you have those that are based on expenditures. Lighter blue is based on population, the population of the district. The lighter gold is based on district tax base, and then you have some miscellaneous adjustments in property tax abatements. So I think what's important to look at for that top one, the very top one, you'll see our adjusted pupil units or our enrollment is projected to increase about 3.2%. So all of those dark blue funding categories are going to increase 3.2% at least, just based on the enrollment growth. I included a graph that shows all of the available financing tools. I'm not going to go through this in great length, but just know that the school districts do have the ability to look at different funding sources depending on what the needs are, and all of them are calculated differently. Again, we've talked at length about some of them on referendum market value, some on net tax capacity, some of them require voter approval, some of them don't, some of them require submitting a review and comment to the state, some don't. So this is just kind of a summary of that. This slide looks at what our existing long-term debt is. So this would be in the form of our building bonds as well as what we have out there for lease purchase agreements or long-term lease agreements. So the top in the blue are all of our general obligation building bonds. You can see we have about $181 million of outstanding principal. And then for our annual appropriation with our lease levy, for certificates of participation and some of our lease purchase agreements in the last few years, we're at about $19 million. So we have about just over $200 million of total outstanding long-term debt. And this graph shows where that falls in each fiscal year. So we always get the question, like, when is X building going to come off the tax rolls, for example? So when tax levies when new building bonds are entered into, we work with our financial advisors to do the best we can to maybe help not have those peaks and valleys. We try to even it out and get a consistent, principal and interest payments throughout the year. So what you might see, if you do have a building that's coming off the books in 4 years, for example, and you issue new debt, you might have the bondholders say, you know what, we don't want you to pay a lot in the first 4 years, and then we're gonna load it up after that. So you can kind of keep that as level as you can. You can see here in 2035, we do see a decrease in that dark blue, which is our debt service. And it's important to note that some of these are based on assumptions. So that gray is our LTFM levy, and the gold is our capital projects, our technology levy. So this graph would illustrate if those funding sources were to continue at the current rate. The gray is a board-approved thing. The gold is a voter-approved thing. So we do come back to the voters to have that renewed every now and then. And why I bring this up is because I show you then what it might look like should there be new debt that is issued for the district. So the new blue color then would be a potential model of what that might look like. Again, you can see how that light blue graph varies from year to year. Some years it's less, some years it's more, just to try to get that. In this case, it'd be about $60 million or so per year, rather than having it 50 one year, 70 the next, down to 50. Really eliminate those peaks and valleys the best you can. I talked a little bit about the tax base composition for each district and how that's important. So for us, again, we do not have a lot of qualifying agriculture or seasonal recreation property. So what you will generally see, and I'm going to compare that first column, which is the market value, to the far right column, which is what the taxpayers actually pay for our levy. So our residential homestead and our other residential, so that might be apartments, those kind of things, make up about 80.4% of our market value. And then you can see on the far right, those properties are subject to pay 75.6% of the taxes. Why that is because you go back to one of the early slides, I talked about how commercial properties are taxed a little bit higher than residential. So you will see the commercial bump up a little bit. In this case, it goes from 17.9% of our market value to 23.6% of the responsibility of the taxes payable in 2026. So I would say I don't want to call anybody or any district an average district, but I would think this would be pretty consistent as to what you might see for an average district, where your residential drops a little bit and your commercial bumps up a little bit. However, looking at some other districts, just to illustrate that, if you look at Bloomington, so Bloomington has something called the Mall of America in their district, and other high-end commercial and industrial tax bases. So you will see their residential homestead actually drops more. They go from 50.9% of market value, responsible for paying 43.9% of their the taxes payable, where the commercial increased from 29.6 to 38.7. So the more commercial industrial property you have in your district, the more you will see of a decrease to your residential homestead taxpayers. Northland District, I don't know where that is. I don't know if anyone does, but they are a district that has high seasonal recreational, and you can see what that does. It actually increases the residential homestead, because you will have seasonal recreation that is exempt from paying some of those taxes. Therefore, the residential homestead increased from 24.2 up to 26.4, where the seasonal rec decreased from 56.8 to 48.2, as they did not have to pay taxes on those referendum market value funding categories. Fulda is a district that I identified as having a lot of qualifying agriculture. So you can see what that does. Even more significantly, only 7.7% of their market value is residential homestead, but those 7.7% are responsible for paying 19.7% of the taxes, while the qualifying agricultural drops from 87.1 down to 65.7. And then lastly, one of our neighbors, Minnetonka, has a really, really high residential homestead percentage. So you will see they stayed pretty consistent where I don't know if it's the right term to use, but they don't get a lot of help from their commercial industrial property tax levies. So their residential homestead is actually pretty consistent to their taxes payable. So again, just illustrating that your tax-based composition does make a big difference as to what you see for property tax payments as well. I said we would look into some of the notable levy changes. So these are the changes from the 2025 levy. We had our local optional revenue increase $332,000. This is a levy category that is based on enrollment. So that is simply due to our increased enrollment. Referendum is the same thing. Referendum revenue increased about $2.1 million. Not only is there an increase due to our enrollment growth, but also because of the inflationary factor that is on our referendum revenue. Our technology levy increases because that one is actually based on our property tax base, and as the district's property tax base increases, so does the technology levy revenue. We did have a decrease for our capital facilities bond. If you recall, the district sold bonds recently for the construction of the at West Middle School to help with, for the music suite at West Middle School. So that is actually decreasing our levy because we are required to use a portion of our annual operating capital to pay for those bonds. I talked at length about those prior year LTFM adjustments, so that was a significant change from 25. We did increase our school age care levy in the community service fund by $215,000. This is one of those categories, if you remember, that is based on actual expenditures. So we do our best to guess what our expenditures are for our school age program, and where we come out. If we come in higher or lower than that, we'll be adjusted in a future year. So we are starting to see the growth of that really take off in that program, which leads to more expenditures. Therefore, we are increasing the levy to account for that. And then all other categories for all funds is about an $891,000 decrease. We did have a couple changes that I talked about from our preliminary levy. So now we're looking at those that changed from the levy that was approved in September. We were working with MDE on all of these. We knew that our lease payments from 2023 were not being entered correctly. We were trying to figure out why. So there was a $463,000 decrease from our preliminary levy. But then that was for our current year, and then for our prior year, in this case it was 2023. For some reason, all of our actual expenditures from our certificates of participation and lease purchase agreements from 2023 were not in MDE system, which we caught after the levy was certified in September. So that did result in a $1.8 million increase, which makes up the biggest difference from what we saw in September to now. And then we did have we received from our actuary company a revised OPEB eligible expenditure, so there was a decrease of about $47,000 there. Levy comparison. So this sheet, it was nice of the county to send with your proposed property tax statement. They had a comparison of all cities, counties, and school districts as to what the increases were, which is really, really interesting. As you can see, a lot of the cities exceeded our district's 6.13% increase, where a lot of the school districts were less than that. So that was an interesting data point, I thought. And Hennepin County did propose a 7.39% increase. I did include there on the bottom not only our actual 6.13%, but going back to that slide where I talked about the LTFM adjustments, I added what it would have been without having those at 1.28%. Did make a couple notes there that Eastern Carver County, and we'll look at some other comparisons with them, they did pass a operating referendum in November, so theirs will increase. And Minnetonka did pass a bond referendum, $85 million in November, so those will increase as well. So these numbers that you will see for those two districts do not include those because we don't have those final numbers yet. So despite our 6.13% increase, I went back and looked at what it was for the last 5 years for all of these neighboring and comparable districts. From 5 years ago, so for comparing from payable 2021 to payable 2026, here is how that looks like for each of those districts. We are at a 22.03% increase. This is sorted lowest to highest, so you can see that we're the second lowest, just a little bit higher than Orono, well below the comparable average of 33.88%, which is actually going to increase when those from Eastern Carver County and Minnetonka become known. This graph then looks at what each district's enrollment change was, so either an increase or a decrease. It's well documented that we've experienced a lot of enrollment growth. In fact, from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 25, a 6.38% increase. Sorting that from highest to lowest, we are by far the highest. And why that's important is all the things that we've talked about before for all of those levy categories that are based on this. So what I did from there then is I kind of just came up with understanding that, okay, a lot of this levy increase is going to be due to your enrollment increase. So I took that 5-year levy increase and subtracted the 5-year enrollment increase to come up with a kind of a fictitious formula, I guess. But for us, that turns out to be a 15.65% non-enrollment change. You know, there's a lot more to it than that, but again, I just took an easy formula for comparison purposes. So how that ranks, we are the lowest. So to me, what that means is the non-enrollment growth in your levy, we have increased by far less than any other district, and far less than the state, and far less than the comparable average too. So again, that goes back to what we said too about we recognize 6.13 doesn't feel very good, but this helps illustrate too when you look at it more of a 3 or a 5-year thing. I'm not so sure what we could have done differently or better to keep it as low as we could. Moving on to adjusted net tax capacity. So we've talked a lot about our net tax capacity. So the tax capacity is the total tax capacity of all properties in the district. For us, that's about $247 million in 2024. Then we get applied what's called a sales ratio. So the sales ratio is for us is 95.7%. So what that means is properties sold at their estimated market value was 95.7% of what the sales price was. So properties are selling higher than what the estimated market value is. So what MDE does then, it calculates, okay, your net tax capacity is really not $246 million. It's going to be $257 million because we're going to take that sales ratio into consideration. This graph then shows in the gold is what our net tax capacity is and what our levy is. So what you don't want to see, or what you do want to see, is you don't want to see your district levy totally match you don't want the blue line to match the gold line. That just means you are having your levy increase as your net tax capacity is. Anytime you're able to keep it at a different, lower pace than that, that means you're basically releasing some of that burden from your taxpayers because of the property growth that you're seeing within the district. So on the left is our district, on the right is the state. And you can see both of them are pretty parallel until recent years. And now this year, we actually decreased or came closer, narrowed the gap a little bit with our district levy to our district net tax capacity. Here's a percentage of that. So I think it's important to see that our high point in payable 2020 was at 49.6. So that was our levy percentage as of our adjusted net tax capacity. That has steadily decreased, and that's now at 39.6%. You can see how that compares to the state. So from 2020 down to 2026, we decreased from 49.6 to 39.6, so 10 percentage points, where the state average decreased from 40.8 down to 33.2, or only 7.6%. So we are exceeding we're doing better than the state average as keeping our levy as a percentage of adjusted net tax capacity lower. Here is that same figure based on our comparable and neighboring districts. We rank third. You will see a lot of the metro districts are higher than the state average. That's pretty normal, but we continue to be less than the comparable average in this percentage. All right, last, we wonder what that means for our taxpayers. And it's important for this disclaimer that what you will see on this slide is really, again, an average. Each property owner might see something a little bit different one way or another, but it's going to be pretty close. And a lot of these factors can vary from year to year, property to property. So anytime you have a change in value of individual property, or a change in property classification, or in a change in the total value of all property within the district, you're going to see some of those factors play themselves out. To help illustrate this a little bit, I'm going to have a little math game for you. So we have a blue and a yellow house, or gold. We'll call it gold. Both of these houses are valued at $250,000, and yes, these are very elementary numbers. They're not realistic, but it helps illustrate what point we want to get across here too. So the total school district levy in this case is $1,000. Both of them are valued at the same price, therefore they're each going to pay $500 of that levy. The next year, the blue house, the value increases 10%, so it goes up to $275,000. The gold value increases 25% to $312,500. The district levy stayed the same, so it's still at $1,000, and you'll see the blue house then is only responsible for $468. So even though their property value increased 10%, their property taxes decreased. Same thing, except in this case, the total school district levy increased 5% up to $1,050. And even in this case, the blue house, despite increasing 10% in value and the school district levy increasing 5%, they still pay less the second year because of that property growth of the gold house. In this case, the blue house, again, is valued at $275,000, gold at $312.50. The school district levy actually decreases 5% down to $950, but the gold house still has to pay more than the previous year. Now, to really mess it up, we had a new house built. It was red. So you can see the total values of all those houses. The district levy increased 10%, so it goes up to $1,100. You split that versus 3 houses now instead of 2, you can see how they all pay a lot less than they were the year before. So what this does, it illustrates 5 important points. An increase in property value does not automatically result in an increase to school property taxes. The inverse of that would be true. A decrease in property value does not automatically result in a decrease to school property taxes. An increase in the district levy does not automatically result in an increase to school property taxes. The inverse of that is true. And first and foremost, and most importantly, property growth within the district lowers the school property tax for all taxpayers. For how these property taxes then are applied to some of our properties in the district. Again, this is just estimates, and they could vary, or they could waver on the final payable 2026 when everything else, all the dust settles. The 4-year comparisons that we're going to look at are based on 2 things: no change in property value, and then a cumulative increase of 11.3% in property value. So that's been about the average increase in property value for a 4-year stretch. Here's a graph format of what you might see. So if you look at, we'll just take the top one there, $400,000 residential homestead. Back in payable 2023, they were paying $1,671 in school district taxes. In 2024, they dropped down to 1614, 2025, 1620, and then this year, 1664. Here's a bar graph showing what that would be for a $500,000 residential homestead property. So again, going back 4 years ago, it's actually only increased $13 from payable 2023. For $650,000 residential homestead, pretty similar to the previous one. Commercial has actually decreased every year for a $500,000 commercial industrial property. $1 million apartment, again, it's $7 less than what you saw in payable 2023. Oops. Now this slide, we understand that the previous slides for a $650,000 home, there's not a $650,000 residential homestead in our property that was $650,000 3 years ago. So this is where you take that 11.3% into consideration. So back in payable 2023, that house that might have an estimated market value of $650,000 this year had a market value of $584,200 back in payable 23, and they were paying $24.95. This year they're paying $28.26. So again, the 11.3% property value increase result in a 13.3% property tax increase. And when you factor in our enrollment growth and all that other stuff too, it's pretty hard to imagine that that could be any less than that. This is a breakdown of those taxes. So the dark blue is the voter-approved operating referendum. The dark gold then is the categorical levies that are board-approved. The gray is voter-approved building bonds and our technology levy. The small light blue one is our debt, our capital facilities, our LTFM bonds. And then the light gold at the top is pretty much everything else. Just an important data point here, our estimated average home value in the Wayzata School District is about $654,614. We recently got something from Hennepin County that said it might be more like $664,000, but we're pretty close to that $650,000 range as to what our average home value is. In payable 2025, when we take that $650,000 home, our taxpayers were paying $2,748 of school district property taxes. When you take that same house, so if you have a $650,000 house, you pick it up and you drop into any of these other school districts, you will see what you would have been paying in payable 2025 taxes. And only 2 districts would you have seen a property tax decrease from what you pay in Wayzata Public Schools. Again, just information here for our median family income. We're at about $189,000 for our district. When you factor in what your school property taxes is based on your median family income, it's about 1.45%. And you can see how that relates to our neighbors and our comparable districts, so considerably less than the average. Minnesota property tax refunds and deferrals. So every taxpayer, if you qualify, is eligible to get some sort of tax refund and or deferral. Again, if you qualify, there's the Minnesota homestead property tax refund. I did put on there what you need to do to qualify for that. There's a special property tax refund program, a senior citizen property tax deferral. And then there's a few other taxpayer resources that are available should you be one of these. And what's important is if you need assistance with that, do not contact Trevor or your school board. You contact your tax professional or the Minnesota Department of Revenue to help with your tax refunds and deferrals. Next step, we'll turn it back over to you where we'll accept any comments either from the board or the public. And then later on, we'll ask you to approve the tax levy. So I apologize for the length of this, and hopefully it was educational and you learned a little bit. That was my goal. We're a learning institution, right? So that's what it was all about.
Thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Jack. Boy, that was a lot of information, numbers. So, colleagues, there is no recommended action at this time, but the board will be asked to approve the levy administrative reports and recommendations later in the board meeting. But for now, if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you. That was great. Lot of numbers, complex topic, but again, very well articulated. So I have two questions. So given we are increasing the referendum levy amount, I think last time when we looked at what would it mean to the taxpayers, I think we were looking at between $27 to $31. Do we know what that revised range would be for median $650,000 house?
I don't remember the dollar amount, but I have had a couple people who have volunteered their own personal property tax statements. One of them might be sitting up at that table, close to the center, and I don't remember the exact numbers. But again, going back to how much our district continues to grow in property wealth, I think rather than the 6.13%, this person's school district property taxes increased far less than that, maybe about half. And again, it differs for every property tax, but our property owner. But that's pretty general as to you might see. I don't have the dollar amount, but that's just a percentage. I know of some that have been less than that. I know some that have been more than that. But I think it's really important for everyone to focus in on making sure that what you see with your property tax value and your classification and make sure it makes sense. The other thing I want to point out too is we get a lot of questions about the two different line items on your property tax statement. You'll see one of them sometimes goes up, one of them goes down, and there's no total on there, which is a little confusing. So just make sure as a property tax or a property owner that you add the two together. A lot of people just focus in on the first one and they say, oh, it went up 8% or whatever. I'm like, well, what'd your second one do? Oh, that went down 10. Okay, add them together then, and let me know what you get. So we get that a lot, so just make sure. But just to answer your question too, I don't have specifics about that, but genuinely you will see that a property tax increase for our owners is less than what the district's levy increase is, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
True, because we, I think, saw that in the last presentation as well, because even though it was, 5 point some percent, was actually like 1.2 or 1.3 that actually translates to the dollar amount. So I was trying to understand, now we have about $6 million more. What does that mean? But I get your point. Mm-hmm. The other question I have is when you showed that modeling of the new debt over next 25, 30, 40 years, what does that do to our bond rating? Would our AAA rating be impacted in any shape or form, or would it stay the same?
Yeah, I can't answer what it would do after that, but I will answer what it will do before that. So anytime you issue new debt, you are required to have an online meeting with Moody's, who's our credit rating agency, and just to make sure that they'll take our current AAA rating, they'll ask about any changes, they'll ask where our current budget is, what our current enrollment is, what our tax base is, all of these questions. So in this case, should they maintain our AAA bond rating, which I don't know why we would ever not be, considering where these trajectories are going. That will affect what we see at bond sale as far as an interest rate. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what it'll do. It's it doesn't really impact what happens after that, but it certainly affects what leads up to that. Okay. And anytime you see a impact, it has been proven that we get far greater lower interest rates on our bonds because of that. It is a big deal. I don't think we celebrate that enough, that it is a really, really big deal. And that it does not affect the school district because that debt service is paid 100% by our taxpayers. So that AAA bonding is a celebration for all of our taxpayers, more so than it really is the district.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Would you be able to explain a little bit more, please, how it used to be on September 1, 4.99%, and right now we're asking 6.13%? How did it ended up at that number?
Yeah, that was those lease payments from 2023 that we were working with MDE. We were working with them during September when we were trying to figure out, but it's pretty busy for them. So we knew that something was not entered correctly on their site. Every August, we are required as a school district to enter all of our information into the to the levy input site, and we met as a team, and like something is not right here. These 2023 lease numbers are not correct, and then we found out after the fact that they were not entered at all. So there was zero amount. So when we put in our actual, so therefore, we were actually getting a 1.8% levy adjustment, a negative adjustment, which was bringing our levy down. So once those 2023 actual payments got in, it eliminated that $1.8 million negative adjustment and made that zero, which is what the difference was between September and now.
So help me understand, the Act to School building bond credits, I think the number was 70% or something like that. So the state gives us that money, so that should not affect our revenue at all, right? Or does it?
Correct. No, that's just the benefit to the qualifying agricultural property.
Correct. Okay. That, I was making sure of that.
Yep.
Okay. And then the existing long-term debt, you showed a couple of slides. One of them showed that we have no long-term debt, that blue bar at the bottom. In 2037, it just goes away. Now, is that because we have not included our upcoming referendum?
Correct. Yep.
Eventually, that will be in there, right?
Yep. Yep. If we were to not issue any new debt between
Correct.
now and when that last dark blue bond or blue bar
Yep.
was on, that would, all the blue bars would then go away.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. So just walk us through the rest of the presentations, I guess. So we have, I'm sorry. Before that, we have public comments on the truth on taxation. This section of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the audience to address the school board regarding the truth in taxation presentation. Speakers will be allotted approximately 3 minutes. The regular audience opportunity to address the board will be available for topics not relating to truth in taxation after the school spotlight presentation later this evening. Please note that this time is provided for citizens to address the board. This is not an appropriate venue for a discussion or debate. If the speaker would like a follow-up contact from the Board of Education, they may leave their contact information with the administrative assistant. Do we have any requests, Amy? Okay. I suppose we can then go to the next item on the agenda, and that would be the reports from organizations. And I believe Rachel Yin is here. Rachel?
Good evening, Superintendent Anderson, members of the board, and everybody else gathered here tonight. My name is Rachel Yin, and I am the Wayzata High School Student Body President, Vice President, and here is December's monthly report. Over the past few weeks, Wayzata students have been busy building community, showcasing talent, and competing at the highest levels. Here are some highlights. Student Council recently wrapped up our Adopt a Family fundraiser, where members eagerly raised funds to support the IOCP Food Bank and the Minnesotan Children's Hospital. Students hosted class competitions to see who can raise the most money, and we've hosted seven different restaurant fundraisers at Panera, Noodles & Company, Nautical Boils, and more. Our fall musical officially closed to outstanding crowds. About 3,000 people attended over the run of the show. Students shined on stage, backstage, and in the pit. And the strong turnout from families and community members show how much support there is for the arts within our high school and our district. Wayzata hosted the Student Council Hennepin Division Fall Meeting, welcoming 360 student leaders from 8 different schools to network and discuss hot topics like mental health and fundraising. Our president, Scott Lusota, delivered an amazing speech on the power of intent and action. On November 20th, our National Honor Society hosted Wayzata Idol, a student talent showcase featuring 10 performing groups. Congratulations to this year's winners, Cedric Murillo and Lily Myers. From music to performance to art, students filled the stage with creativity and confidence. Lastly, our dance team hosted our home meet, bringing energy, precision, and a lot of school pride to the floor. The weather might be getting colder and colder, but students are still burning to build community and demonstrate children pride. Hope you all have a great evening and see you all next month. I'm now open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Rachel. Comments, questions? I see that there are none. Thank you so much, and we'll see you.
Yes, of
We'll see
course.
you in January, right?
Yep. see
Okay.
you in
Thank you so
January.
much.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is recognitions, and I will join Dr. Anderson at the podium.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our school board meeting tonight. My name is Chase Anderson. I'm the superintendent for the school district, and it's always my pleasure to convene the recognitions part of the program. And we have 3 such recognitions tonight. And the first is for our girls cross-country state champions. And I know we have our coach here tonight and some of our athletes. I'm going to invite anybody who's here with the cross-country team to please come up and join us over here. Thank you for being here. Sorry we're a few minutes late, but I'm sure you made use of the time to run 3 or 4 miles in the meantime before we got started here, so you're all warmed up now. It is really an honor for us to recognize this group tonight, and I want to just share a little bit before I turn it over to Kelsey Beach, the coach here with the team tonight, and share a little bit about this historic four-peat of our girls cross-country program. So I'd like to share the following. We are delighted to report on the exceptional performance of the Wayzata Cross Country program at the 2025 Minnesota State High School League Class AAA State Meet, held on Saturday, November 1st of 2025. The Wayzata girls cross country team made history by capturing their 4th consecutive Class AAA State Championship. Congrats on that. Officially achieving a monumental four-peat. The team displayed an overwhelming dominance, scoring an astoundingly low team total of just 27 points, a testament to their depth and commitment. The victory was secured by a phenomenal team effort with 4 runners placing in the top 10 overall. Senior Maddie Gullickson culminated her impressive high school career by winning the individual Class AAA State Championship, her first cross-country title. Gullickson finished the 5K course at Les Bolstad Golf Course, achieving her season goal of breaking the 17-minute barrier. Nike Cross Nationals, in addition to the impressive state championship, the Wayzata girls cross country team ended their historic season as an undisputed champions of the country, winning the Nike Cross Nationals on December 6th, just a few days ago, a competition that brings together the top high school teams in the United States. The team was officially crowned the national champion, winning with 142 points and narrowly beating the second place team by just 5 points. This is the program's second national title in this event, confirming that Wayzata is one of the elite high school cross-country programs in the nation. Congratulations. Wow, that's a lot. Well done. This time I'll turn it over to Kelsey, and you can share a little bit about our team.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you. That was wonderful and a lot. Yes, thank you for recognizing this amazing group. It really is an incredible team. And like you just heard, a state champion team, and then qualifying at our regional meet in early November for the national meet that, yes, they won in Portland over the weekend on a muddy, challenging course. So it was pretty cool. So truly you have the fastest girls cross country team in the nation here amongst you. But really it was a super special season that started back in the summer when this group started laying the foundation and putting the work and the miles in, really started talking about their potential, believing in it, and taking care of one another. As the season progressed, you could see that they really were going to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. They did all the little things right to help themselves and just really kind of kept on building that way and building this team of inclusivity, this team of quiet confidence. One of my favorite things was talking to the seniors about this squad and having them say, there's no cliques. There's no separation by ability, by grade. We are all in this together. And that type of support, whether you're the top runner or you're new to the sport, that you can feel that as a team. You can feel that support of the whole squad, which was really cool. And I think we really saw it in action at that state meet. This group had an incredible way of getting out super smart in all of their races and trusting each other as their anchors, knowing this person's going to help me get out right. I'm going to cue off of this teammate, and then kind of building from there throughout every race, taking the middle of the race and getting gritty and helping each other. If you watched them, you could see these kind of silent signs of support they would give each other. Maybe it was sometimes slapping the leg, sort of this, let's go build in this part of the race together and get after it. And all of them doing that and ultimately always finishing their races very fast and finding those gear shifts. I loved watching them at state. We had kind of a go spot about 800 meters to the finish and literally seeing each of them speed up those hands and find that next gear that, yes, ultimately ended up giving them the win at state. And that absolutely incredible historic one. That is the lowest team score total from a girls' state meet with that 27 points. And so that's pretty darn cool. We had, Maddie Gullickson leading the way in that 16:54 and winning her state championship title. We had then, we had Jasleen Malhara-Gozario, who was in 5th place. And then we had Lila Golem, who unfortunately is not here tonight, in 8th place. Miley Clark in 9th place. And Alyssa Ledman in 14th place that all earned all state honors, which was really neat. We had then Addison Neitz and Chloe Kissel rounding out our top 7. This team earned academic gold in the process as well. So they're also really smart, which is pretty cool. They're not here tonight, but Sienna Bloomberg and Rachel Tong were our alternates and just a really integral part of the fingerprints on this squad. So I think my last piece, when you listen to these girls and any of their post-race interviews, they talked about each other. They each had reasons to boast about themselves individually, and that would have been totally acceptable, but they never did. It was always about the we and the us and the big things that they believed in and accomplished together. So super proud of this squad and really grateful for the recognition tonight. Thank you.
Again, congratulations and thank you so much for being here tonight. Our next recognition for this evening is for our West Middle School Employee of the Month. And I would like to invite Anna Prostrolo to please come forward and be recognized tonight. Congratulations. I'm going to read a script that was prepared on her behalf and then give Anna an opportunity to share a few thoughts if you'd like to do so. Looks like you're all queued up and ready to roll with that. I'd like to share the following. Wayzata West Middle School is proud to recognize Anna Prostrolo as the December Employee of the Month. Anna has taught middle school science in Wayzata for 10 years, bringing learner-centered expertise, innovation, and enthusiasm to her classroom every day. Anna has served as the building professional learning lead and a member of the instructional leadership team, helping set school goals and leading efforts to achieve them. She has been instrumental in implementing learner-centered instructional practices across the building and consistently keeps students at the heart of her work. Anna also inspires her colleagues. She has been central to West's use of the Ignite, Chunk, Chew review framework, facilitating professional learning that meets staff where they are and supporting both new and veteran teachers. Her leadership has strengthened instructional practices and contributed to a positive, growth-oriented culture. Anna leads with positivity, a solution-focused mindset, and strong collaboration. She plans engaging lessons with her PLC teammate and took the lead on the 6th grade Eagle Bluff extended day field trip and 6th grade winter ski field trip. She works daily to build a community among students and colleagues. West colleague Dan Narveson shared, Anna exemplifies true dedication. She is committed to her students, colleagues, and our community, ensuring every student feels they belong and designing instruction for all learners. Her leadership and professional development work strengthen our building. We are incredibly fortunate to have her at West. Anna models lifelong learning, a team-first approach, and a calm, supportive presence that benefits everyone around her. Congratulations, Anna, for being named the December Employee of the Month. And now it's your turn.
I am of the age that speaks from a phone, so thank you. It's an honor. I've been lucky to spend my entire teaching career in Wayzata Public Schools, and I could not be more thankful for the opportunities that this district has provided for me. I'm here today, though, because of all the educators that came before me and who have made the teacher that I am today. Most importantly, my father, my lifelong educator, and inspiration to also become a middle school science teacher. So I wanted to say thank you to him. I also wanted to say that I've done the Tour de Wayzata, as I like to call it. I've been in all 3 middle school buildings and taught all 3 middle school grades. And we truly have amazing educators in this district. And I feel very privileged to continue to learn from all of them. Thank you to Ryan and Carly and to Dan for your kind words and for creating the space for me to be the educator that I am today. So thank you. Thanks.
Congratulations again, Anna, and to the West team that are here to support her tonight. We have only one other recognition this evening, and each month it's our tradition to announce those who have indicated their intent to retire since the last meeting that we had. And we have only one tonight, Barbara Hill, who's been a paraprofessional at Central Middle School for 22 years. I haven't spotted Barbara in the crowd, but if you're here, come on down. Probably watching on TV instead of coming out in the snow tonight, I would imagine. But congratulations to her, and we'll give her a round of applause, please, to thank her. And that concludes our recognitions portion of tonight's program, and thank you so much for being here for that. And we'll move on to our next part of our meeting. Thank you.
Congratulations to the honorees, and thank you, Dr. Anderson. Okay, now we have the highlight of our regular meetings, the school spotlight presentation. And tonight we have West Middle School presenting, and Principal Ryan Carlson will do the honors. Thank you.
Ryan, you're on.
Yeah, I'll stand. Thanks for having me, everyone. And I will keep my remarks fairly brief because we have a bunch of students here that want to tell the story and can tell it far better than I can. So just a little bit about West Middle School, just for some grounding. We have around 880 students this year, which is an increase. I think a few years ago we were probably around 650 students, so we are growing. With 6th and 7th grade around 300 or just above 300, and 8th grade being around 275. We do have an alternating block schedule, which is our second year of running that schedule. Just a few things about West. One of the things that we really focus our professional learning around is our vision card, which is connected to the WPS strategic roadmap. But just a few key points to that, like we strive for exceptional learning, experiences, and relationships for each and every student. So every single time we gather as a staff, we talk about that piece.
We talk about how through their experiences at West, students will explore their passions, build their independence as learners, and grow and develop academically, socially, and emotionally. And those aren't just words for us. Those are things we take very seriously. We know that we have to be intentional to try to create those experiences and develop those skills over their 3 years with us. So what we're here to really talk about tonight is the idea of exploration and student agency in middle school. So according to the Association for Middle Level Education, the general approach to the entire curriculum at the middle level should be one of exploration, and exploratory courses really are a fundamental part of any successful middle school. Like, we want our students to be people who are passionate and exploring what their interests are. And as we went through our middle level review process a few years back, it really became clear that we wanted our middle schools to be places that invited students to be adventuresome, curious explorers. And our previous schedule was limited in terms of our exploratory options and those opportunities for students. So here is just an example of one of our registration sheets. So as we kind of look at this, I think it's fun to think back. I think back to Shakopee Junior High in the mid-90s. I didn't have these opportunities, so I look at like a sheet like this. I'm like, okay, which course would you choose? If you had in 7th grade, we've got a couple options. In 8th grade, we've got a couple more. As you look through all the different options, whether it's art of cooking and strength training and Shark Tank and things like that, which catches your interest? Like, for me, I get super excited as an educator to have these opportunities for our students and think about myself as a young adolescent, 12 to 14 years old, and how excited I would have been to have some of these opportunities to explore my interests and passions. So one of the key reasons that the AMLE recommends a block schedule for middle school students is the exploratory options that it allows our students. Our new middle school schedule has a number of elective opportunities that give students agency and the opportunity to explore passion areas. We're going to highlight some of those opportunities today from our students and hear really from them about their experiences and how it's impacted their school journey. So here's just what we are running this year at West Middle School. Each middle school offers the same elective opportunities. Depending upon enrollment, it looks a little bit different in each building, but here's what we have running at West this year. A ton of different options for kids, and we're gonna get into it and let the students tell you about their experiences in these courses. So I'm gonna have students kind of come up one at a time. So we'll start with art of cooking. And students will just share a little bit about that class, and we'll kind of move on to the next slide. And then at the end, we'll take any questions that people might have.
Hello, I'm Ashelina, and I'm an 8th grade student at Wayzata West Middle School. And art of cooking is basically when we get to, try new recipes, take notes, and how to use utensils properly. And we learn how to clean up after ourselves too. And some skills that I've learned are basically we just learn how to use utensils properly because you don't want to poke yourself with a knife. And then we learn how to clean up after ourselves. We share responsibilities, so we take turns doing dishes. We sweep the floors and we clean the countertops. And this is really useful for the future right now. And it's just it helps us be dependent and not rely on other people to do it for us. And electives have impacted our day a lot. So when I was in 6th grade, I didn't really have electives, and now that I do have electives, I'm really grateful, and it's something I really look forward to because it's super fun to talk with my friends and cook. And it's also with 7th graders as well, so we get to talk and meet with new people, and we get to cook with new people, and it's just a really fun experience. And we get to have projects too where we get to create our own recipes and stuff, and it's bakery projects, and the food we make is really delicious, and especially because for me it's at the end of the day, so it's something I really look forward to. And I heard from Mr. Carlson that he didn't really have electives when he was in school, so I'm really grateful to have art of cooking and a bunch of other electives. Thank you.
Way back in the mid-90s, it was not quite what we have now. Oh, yes, it was.
Hello, I'm Haya Patel, and I am in interior design and fashion class. We get to embroider stuff, and we get to learn how to make clothes on a mannequin. And currently, we are learning how to make design houses using the elements of design, and we get to learn how much a house costs in different states and why they are priced that way. We learned how to embroider how much a house costs, and electives, in my opinion, are needed because they make school more fun and it expands our knowledge in that area. And electives are needed because they expand our skill sets and they make us, they can help us make new friends with people we never thought we could have friends with. Thank you for having me.
Hello, my name is Charlie, and I'll be sharing about the elective competitive sports. First, something that was fun in this class was that with all the things we didn't do in normal PE. So they did sports that weren't popular known, and so it gave students a choice or a different view of what other people play. And something that I learned was how to lead a class with different types of people and how to make strategies with them in gameplay. Because my teacher, Miss Kennedy, gave me the choice to lead a unit, and I led the rugby unit. And the first third of the class, I taught them how to play and strategies and stuff. And then the second bit of class, I got to play with them, but they all had there were different groups of people, so they had different ability levels. So it was kind of difficult. Now I realize how teachers feel, and then since I knew all that, it was kind of easier playing with them. Competitive sports gave me something to look forward in the day and motivates me to go to school. And it also gave me a new perspective on things, such as leading a class and having a whole block of it, because normal PE is a half block, so it's a crunch together and kind of stressful. But this is you have time to debrief what you're doing and a warm up, and then more time for gameplay. And then overall, I think electives make the whole middle school experience better because it helps develop balance between stressful and hard thinking classes, and then this gives you a break to have fun. And not every class is your favorite and goes the way you want it, and that's just how life goes. And so this kind of prepares you for that. And yeah.
Hi, I'm McKenna Wilhoy in 7th grade. I did Unified PE in elementary and loved it. I love building connections with our partners, meeting new people, and forming new relationships in this class. It is so much fun to make memories with new friends. I always have so much fun in Unified with our partners.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm also a 7th grader. I love how inclusive everyone is in this class and how I get to learn from my partners that now I get to call my friends. I've learned how to work with new people. Unified PE has impacted me by being able to have many new connections and being able to work with people.
Unified PE is a class elective where we have students with and without disabilities come together through different PE activities,
while working together and forming new connections with each other.
And our student that was here to talk about strength training, they had to go the truth and taxation. It was riveting to him. He was engaged in it, but they had to take off. So we'll move on to 3D art.
Hi, my name's Bibi, and I'm going to be talking about my experience with 3D art. Something I really enjoyed in 3D art is the many projects we got to do, and especially like using clay. Being able to work with clay has had many impacts on me, considering the fact that I never worked with clay outside of this class. As of right now, we're working on clay busts, which is like basically sculpting a face, which is potentially your face. And this has taught me like many things about the human face and like proportions. Through this class, I have learned patience because it takes a lot of patience when working with art. I've learned that not everything goes as planned, and you have to like trust that eventually it will work out, even though it doesn't look right at the moment. And 3D art has given me the opportunity to explore things outside of my comfort zone because I've never really thought myself as like the artsy person. But 3D art has given me a whole new perspective of art. 3D art is like one of my favorite classes, and I really enjoy it. It has helped me own my learning because it's like really fun to do work, and which makes it like easy to do the work. Overall, 3D art is like fun and amazing class to have, and I really look forward to it in the day. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Avery Reyna, and I am from Payne Jaw. So what made this class fun is we get to express ourselves using passion-bound art and wonderful creativity. I learned a lot from this class, such as artistic vocabulary, like stippling or foreground. At first, I never knew what these were, but now I do. Having choices for electives allows me, my friends, and all students to explore our passions. Choices also let us excel at what we like to do most. It makes learning exciting and fun, like a big journey. That will make many amazing memories to come. These classes help us achieve bold. We can make friends and build community. We can own our learning and excel at stuff. And L, we have chances to lead and gain life skills. Finally, D, we can develop amazing life skills that will help us with our educational career. Thank you.
We've got a couple.
2, 1.
I chose dance as my elective because I really like dancing with friends and it's my favorite sport. Also, my favorite unit was the gymnastics or the just dance.
I chose dance as an elective because I wanted to learn more about my favorite sport and I wanted to have a space where I could just like not worry about what other people thought.
I really like how in dance I can experiment with many different styles and learn from many different people around me, as well as finding like my own unique style. And my favorite unit was dancing through the decades.
I chose dance because my sister does dance and it looks really fun. And also, I feel like I really get to be creative in dance, and I love to tumble and like do like jumps and stuff like that.
I chose dance because I've never really danced before, so it was something new I wanted to try with. And I love how dance like lets me be free and get creative with styles and stuff.
Hi, my name is Vivian. This is my second year of theater, and I like having theater as a full block more than a half block because it gives us longer time. It gives us longer periods of time to work on our project.
Hi, my name is Josiah Bradley, and I love theater because theater helps me improve in some of my work and acting and stuff like that, because that's what I want to do in the future. And Miss Piggy's great. And yeah,
one thing I like about this year's theater more than last year's theater was probably that this year we get a lot more time to work and learn more things about theater and get to communicate with friends.
All right, a couple other electives that we didn't have. We're kind of juggling. We've got a choir concert going on tonight. There's a little bit of snow, so there were some students that couldn't make it. But Shark Tank is another popular elective that we have. You see some pictures there of some of the amazing things kids produced in that class, along with some quotes about their experiences. And then we have World Art as well. We weren't able to get any pictures of that, but really it's been just, as a principal, just super exciting to see kids have a chance to explore their passions and kind of just dive into these new classes and get amazing experiences from those classes and develop a new sets of skills that they didn't have access to before. So from my lens, it's been an amazing win for our building, and hearing it from students, I think, is much more powerful than just hearing it from school administration sometimes. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I'll defer a lot of those questions to any kids.
Thank you, Principal Carlson, and thank you, all of you, for your presentations. I knew there would be one victim of truth in taxation, and did that student leave? Did they come and then they left after?
Yeah.
Too much, Trevor. Too much to absorb. I know.
Everyone's got busy things going on.
I know. I'm just kidding. Are there donuts from the cooking class here? Did you bring the donuts? No? No. Okay.
It's my favorite thing is when there's a lab going on that sometimes a middle school hallway doesn't smell amazing. But when there's cookies or caramel rolls cooking, it definitely has amazing smell.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, though. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
I have one quick question. And again, I know most of the middle schoolers, they just love all the electives. One thing what we have seen, including with our daughter and her friends, sometimes they don't get the elective that they opt for. So what has been the experience? Are there like top 3 or 5 that everybody shoots for, and then really that 80-20 kind of rule, and then you have to drop? Or what has been the experience? Are we trying to expand more of these electives?
Yeah, I would say that this past year was far, far better in that regard. We switched to a new scheduling tool called Timely that in Skyward, it was just a little bit more difficult for that system to like pick the top electives for the student. This year, it was dramatically down. Almost every student got, if they listed their top 5 choices, they always got 2 classes from those top 5, for example. So much, much better with Timely. And that leads to just a much better student experience because kids are getting the classes they're interested in. Teachers are having kids that are super excited about that class rather than being kind of just put into it. So with Timely, that's been a huge help in getting students the classes that they really have an interest in.
Great, thank you.
I'm just curious. I heard that Wayzata High School has some sort of club for crocheting. Do girls at West Middle School also crochet?
We actually have a crochet club that meets during our My Time and is being featured on some of the local news stations.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And this year we used to do it once a week, but the demand was so high that we moved it to twice a week because there was like 45 or 50 students that wanted to be part of it, and we couldn't do that in one day, so we moved it to 2 days.
It's kind of amazing for me, to be honest. My teacher taught me how to crochet too, and I just from one lesson I learned a lot, and it's amazing to see that. I felt like it's long forgotten hobby, and all of a sudden girls like doing it.
And that's to me like just the beauty of middle school is that opportunity to find what your passion is. You might not even know that it's your passion yet, and when you try it, just having more opportunities like that for kids is really powerful.
Just a quick follow-up. Is it open to all students?
Yes. Yep. Any student during My Time can open into it and talk to our teacher that runs it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all of you for coming and sharing your experiences with the board. It's been nice to hear. I know this is our second year, with this program or the block schedule, and there were some growing pains, but it sounds like it's been a huge success, and I'm grateful for all our students that they have this opportunity to learn about themselves and maybe discover interests they didn't know they had. And we heard recently in a teaching and learning committee about our CTE classes at the high school, and that there's been, we're trying to align the middle school classes with what's going on in the high school. So hopefully all of the students are figuring out what kinds of things they might want to continue with at the high school. And all of that has just it's been really nice to see all of that. So all 3 of my kids went to West, and be bold.
Well, I have a question for the students, and whoever wants to answer this one. It seems like as you're talking through all of this, you're learning a lot of new skills. Do you think that your electives are also helping some of your other classes and your academics in those classes?
Yeah, I definitely think so because and it's been a lot easier to build like new connections with new friends, and it's been helping me like be able to work with people better and be more patient.
That's really great.
I also feel like it's helping my other classes because so when we take art classes, we can learn a whole bunch of different styles of art, and sometimes that contributes to like other skills just besides learning art, and that can like help with like other classes like language arts or math and stuff like that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming out on the snowy night too.
I also want to say thank you for coming out on a snowy night, and some of you were privileged to listen to get a little economics lesson along the way, so you're welcome. That wasn't that, right? Yes, the absolute best way to spend a Monday night. So thank you for that. I actually had 3 things to say, and they were all sort of asked by my board colleagues, but students didn't answer any of them. So I'm going to ask you all the same questions. The first question is, it feels like we figured out a little bit like the short blocks versus the long blocks and how to do that, and that this just feels a little bit better in your schedule. Students, do electives, for those of you that are 8th graders that did this last year, how is it feeling this year versus last year?
This year, it's just like, I guess there would be like half blocks too, but like with art of cooking and stuff, I prefer like full blocks, because then we get like more time to cook and clean up, and then we also get like this family eating time kind of thing where we like sit together as a table and we eat our food, and if we want we could take it home. So we prefer full blocks for art of cooking.
Awesome. That's so cool. And then my second question is, a lot of people when they come to Wayzata, especially when they're little, talk about the Great Big High School and what do you do with the Great Big High School and the Great Big Course Catalog and all the other things. Do you feel like your experience with electives in middle school maybe gives you some ideas of what you might want to do at the high school, or makes you feel more confident in that experience of picking choices of classes that are good fits for you?
Decide what I want to like do for high school, because like I'm taking art class right now, so it kind of helps me decide that I don't want to do an art class in high school, so I can like choose like a wide variety of art classes to take, because like there's a lot of different kinds of art. So yeah, I feel like it really helps me like decide what I want to do when I get to high school, instead of like having to think about it really hard.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm taking theater class, and it's really just like teaching me a lot about theater, and it helps me like, because I was kind of thinking about maybe doing some plays in high school, but like just theater class, it just encourages me to do some plays or take more theater classes or just do more artistic things like that.
That's super awesome. Thank you.
I just wanted to share one quick story. So in my middle school days, back when we called them junior high schools, we didn't have a lot of electives, but I know I took an art class because to this day, trust me, when I was in 7th grade, it was a long time ago. But to this day, in my home office on my desk, I have 2 pieces of clay art that I made in Mr. Bradbury's 7th grade art class. And when I made them, I don't think I really knew what they were, and I scratched in some little designs on the side and thought that was really an artistic moment for me. And many, many years later, I still have those on my desk and think back to, having those opportunities to do different things when you're in middle school or even in high school. And a few years back, this is sort of the punchline that I'm leading up to. I actually knocked one over and it broke into 5 or 6 pieces. I glued it together. And now it even looks less artistic than it did before it broke. But those creations that you have then, it's interesting what you hold on to and what still has meaning and things that you can reflect back on. So I really appreciate that you're all here tonight and shared your experiences. So thanks for coming out on this cold, snowy night.
Okay, if there are no more questions, thank you, Principal Carlson, and thank you to all the students that came and participated in this. Thank you for sharing the information and what you learned and what you have achieved. Thank you so much. Okay, so next is the audience opportunity to address the board, and I see that there is one request. And this section of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the community to address the school board. Speakers who wish to provide input to the school board must complete the sign-up sheet and return it to our administrative assistant, Amy, sitting at the table on my right. And please note that you will need to complete a request form to be included on the speaker request list. When you are invited to this podium, please identify the subject and/or agenda items to which your comments pertain. Priority will be given to students and families with the students currently enrolled in the district. The school board practice is not to engage in a discussion or debate with the speaker, but rather allow the speaker time to express their thoughts. Please present your comments in a respectful and professional manner. All right, so I'm going to invite one speaker tonight, that's Sally Ditzenbach. And the topic she will address the board on is soliciting teacher feedback. Sally.
Good evening. I'm Sally Dietzenbach, and I teach at East Middle School. I'm here tonight to convey one clear message. Our administration needs to start listening to our teachers and trusting their professional judgment. Morale is low amongst many teachers in our district right now, and much of it stems from being ignored when we try to tell administrators what it is that we need. For example, teachers at my school were never asked for feedback on what types or frequency of meetings and professional learning would be most beneficial for both our students and our teachers. As a result, of the 70 days from September to December, we have a required 30-minute morning meeting. That's from the beginning of our contract time to the minute students show up on 48 of those 70 days, with 11 optional meetings on the other days. My job is not to attend meetings. Honestly, even people whose jobs center around meetings don't always have that many required meetings. My job is to teach children, and that's what I should be working on. As a result of this overzealous meeting schedule, teachers have significantly less time to prepare their classrooms for their daily lessons, to grade and give feedback on student work, to communicate with parents, to plan Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions, the things that make difference. Why isn't admin asking teachers for their input? Why aren't they listening to us when we tell them that these types of decisions are hindering our teaching instead of improving it? The district should also be soliciting teacher feedback when deciding school policies. Last week, we had a required PD session, and our teachers were asked to look at their student data and use it to evaluate our instruction. However, we were told that if we have several students coming to class late, we should evaluate our own instruction and think about why it is that our instruction is not making students want to come to class on time. Basically, we were blamed for any student tardies. I would think that from a teacher's perspective, a much more logical conclusion would be that excess tardies are more likely due to a lack of consequences for students who do not come to class on time. Under our tardy policy, which teachers were not consulted on, students can be tardy up to 4 times per class per quarter before they would face any consequences from administration. Since students have roughly 9 classes, that means theoretically they could be coming tardy to class 144 times per year without any consequence from building administration. We need to start including teachers in these decisions. Our district is also out of compliance with state law that requires them to invite teacher feedback. According to state statute, all public employees are required to meet with employees once every 4 months to meet and confer about matters related to services being provided to the public. However, our last meet and confer meeting was held on February 26th. We do not even have a meeting scheduled so far for this school year.
Thank you, Sally. The time is up. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, moving on to administrative reports and recommendations. First, District Administrative Assistant Amy Geis, who also doubles up as the election clerk, will present the combined polling places. Amy.
Thank you, Chair Sahoni. Yes, I'm here as the election clerk for this particular matter. Minnesota statute requires that we establish combined polling locations every year by December 31st, whether we have a planned election for that upcoming year or not, given the referendum that is on the books for April. We are establishing the same 5 polling locations that we have used as the last couple years, as well as the same absentee location. So the District Service Center will still serve as our absentee location. We'll be using the Wayzata Creekside Building, Hamel Community Center, Plymouth Community Center, and Wayzata City Hall and Fourth Baptist Church. Again, we do need to establish those. I will note, and I will continue to remind voters, that Minnetonka does not have an election scheduled for April. So our 5 precincts that are located in Minnetonka will be folded into our current combined locations. So I'm sending 2 of them to Wayzata City Hall, 3 of them to Fourth Baptist. The voters of Minnetonka in those precincts will be getting a postcard from us at the beginning of the school year.
Thank you, Amy. So board colleagues, the recommended action is to adopt the resolution establishing combined polling places for the calendar year 2026 and school district elections not held on the same day as a statewide election and designating hours during which the polling places will remain open. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Yes, Dan.
I would like to say thank you so much for the fantastic presentation to the Community Relations Committee. Receiving the maps and how these new details are being communicated to the community is very helpful, and so I appreciate the dedication. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Amy. And I think in that committee meeting, I noticed Dan, who loves to play with maps. He had a good time there. Thank you, Dan. Any other questions, comments? If not, I will read the recommended action again. Adopt the resolution establishing combined polling places for the calendar year 2026 and school district elections not held on the same day as a statewide election and designating hours during which the polling places will remain open. This is a roll call vote.
Sarah Johansson,
Yes.
Paris Bende,
Yes.
Sheila Pryor, yes. Heidi Cater,
Yes.
Valentina Ayers,
Yes.
Dan Ginestra,
Yes.
Milan Sahoni.
Yes, the motion carries. Thank you, Sheila. All right. There is no teaching and learning report tonight. And next we have Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Trevor Peterson, presenting the combined statements ending October 31st. Over to you, Peter. Trevor, rather.
Yeah, I'll actually have Jack approach the table. Okay. He's stuck around to do the next 2 items, so he'll take care of that.
Hello again. Big night for me. So I'll be presenting the October financial statements. This is 4 months of the fiscal year for 25-26. First, we'll be looking at the statement of revenues for October 31st, 2025. On the topic of property taxes, we have started receiving our property tax payments. We receive a big payment in October and then another one in November. So that, as you'll see, we are starting to be in line with the budget there for 25-26, and we are consistent with previous fiscal years. Similar with state aids are metered, and we are right where we kind of projected us to be at this time of the year. I expect in 2026 that will obviously, that revenue will start coming in more. Federal aids, we haven't made any draws for 25-26 expenditures yet, so which is why there's 0 actuals showing up for the budget there. You will notice that in 24-25 we had 15% budget to actual at this point in the year, and that was just because of the remaining ESSER funds that we had in 24-25, because we had to do one final draw for those to spend them all down. So that's why there's that 15% in 24-25. But other than that, we are right where we kind of expected to be for 25-26, and similar for the miscellaneous local revenues. For food service, you'll notice we're down a little bit, and this is just based again on the federal draws. I've been expecting that we'll be right-sized in November when that money comes in. And then community service and debt service are right where we project them to be, and they're also similar with previous fiscal years. Moving on to the expenditures for October, all the general fund expenditures are coming in right where we expect them to be for October. Salaries are down just a little bit compared to previous years, and this was just due to us budgeting for that teacher retro, the teacher salary increase on their contract before, the retro didn't take effect until November. So there's a little dip there, but in November that will right size when that retro goes through and we get aligned with our budget. Benefits is also right in line with previous fiscal years. And then when it comes to items such as purchase services, supplies, capital expenditures, these all fluctuate year to year, but we are right in line with previous years for this, as you can see, and the total general fund expenditures are right around 20 to 21% year over year. Similar for the food service, community service, and debt service, these are also all in line for 4 fiscal months of the fiscal year. And just finally here, as I kind of mentioned, on the revenue side, we have received those property tax payments, the first one in October. So that's why our cash is higher at this point. And that's just because of that money hitting our bank account. I would like to point out that our yield did go down this month for our MISLEF liquid and max class accounts. They were sitting at 4.1 and 4.19 last month, and we did drop down 0.1%. From the previous month. So we'll kind of monitor this with our yields on these accounts. There's not a lot we can do, but we can monitor them and see how it kind of fluctuates month over month. So I can open up to questions.
Thank you, Jack. Any questions, comments? No? I have a couple of questions. Going to the revenue side, when do we realize the federal funds, that 3 million plus? I know they're in line with what we had before, but when are they typically realized? When do we get those?
Yeah, so every school district does them a little bit differently. Wayzata is, we have a pretty good cash flow within our bank accounts. So some school districts rely a little bit more on doing monthly or quarterly draws, but we are in a situation where we can do either semi or annual federal draws. So for us at the district, what we've been doing is we do one draw at the end of the year, and we receive all the revenue as one payment.
How does that affect our interest, right? I mean, if we are not getting the money, we are not getting any interest on that.
That's a good question, and it's something I can definitely look into on what the interest would be on the total of the $3 million.
Okay.
Obviously, it would be around the 4%. But yeah, to your point, it would be more cash in the bank, which would mean we would be earning a little bit of interest on it.
And the second question, So, second question I have is about with regard to the MISLAB fund, the decrease in the yield, is that from the federal rate cuts typically?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's when we noticed them kind of starting to go down. They were staying pretty steady for a few months there, and then we finally started noticing. I did check the other day, and they haven't dropped below 4 yet, because I can kind of check on our account balance to see where the yield's sitting, and it hasn't dropped below 4 yet, but we are monitoring it and just keeping watch.
Okay, good. Thank you, Jack. There is no action on this one. Next, we will seek approval of the fiscal year 24-25 audit report. Is Jack going to be presenting that as well?
Yeah, I'll just make a couple comments first to just a reminder to the board that our audit firm, LB Carlson, did present this at the last board meeting in pretty great length. So I think with that, I want to make sure that once again, I know what I did then, I want to do it again, but that report was extremely favorable, both in terms of finances of the school district as well as procedurally. So that can't happen without great work from the finance team, Jack especially. Jen Welk is here too, and the rest of the finance team. Great work, and it extends all the way. Every employee in the school district has a say in that. So it's we couldn't be more proud of that, and we talked a little bit about that in the Truth and Taxation presentation too. But it does not go unnoticed, and it should be celebrated accordingly. So I just wanted to point that out first, and I think we wouldn't have any other further comment about the audit itself. The 3 reports were included in your packet, but Jack could certainly answer any questions that might have come up between last meeting and this meeting. Otherwise, we would just seek the recommended action on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to read the recommended action now then, is to approve the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. Further, approve the June 30th, 2025 assigned fund balance in the amount of $11,294,845.20, I believe, to be used for the specific purposes noted in the agenda packet. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote again, Sheila. Oh, you wanted to say something? No.
Heidi Cater,
Yes.
Valentina Ayers,
Yes.
Dan Ginestra,
Yes.
Sarah Johansson,
Yes.
Paris Bende,
Yes.
Sheila Pryor, yes, Milan Sahoni.
Yes, the motion carries. Thank you. The next item will be the annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2025. Is that right?
Number 3, levy certification. That's a subcomponent of what we just approved.
Oh, okay. So I don't have the recommendation. I did not see that on the agenda. We have the recommendation. I can have. Can you read the recommendation for that certification, please?
Oh, sure. Yep. And of course, I have nothing more to say. I spent plenty of time earlier talking about it, but if anything has come up between now and then, I certainly would entertain any more questions about the levy. Otherwise, at this time, we do recommend that the board certify the maximum allowable levy amount of $102,228,554.20 and authorize the board clerk to sign the final payable 26 levy limitation certification report.
Is there a motion?
I so move.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. I did find the recommendation on my notes here, by the way, so if necessary, I could have read that again. This is a roll call vote.
Dan Ginestra,
Yes.
Sarah Johansson,
Yes.
Paris Bende,
Yes.
Sheila Pryor, yes, Heidi Cater,
Yes.
Valentina Ayers,
Yes.
Milan Sahoni.
Yes, the motion carries. Thank you, Sheila. Okay, so now we go to the comprehensive financials, right, Trevor? Is that the next one?
No, we're all done.
All done? I don't know where I got all this from.
Yep.
Okay. The notes must have mixed up from previous meetings, so sorry about that.
It's all good.
All right, so there are no human resources services report tonight, no other board action, and then the final item on the agenda is board reports. This section of the agenda provides an opportunity for 4 board members to update school board members on school board related work or to make announcements of interest to the public. This evening, Director Ginestra, who represents Wayzata on the District 287 board, will present a year in review for District 287 then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Millen mentioned, I've had the honor of being Wayzata's representative to the Intermediate District 287 School Board for the last few years. It's been an incredible opportunity I wanted to bring to all of you my second year in review. So we've been really busy the last year. The bulk of our work has been around goal setting towards student achievement, as well as bringing more teachers into the education profession. As a district, we found promise in these goals, which affirm student success while emphasizing long-term planning. Our mission statement, which is read off at every board meeting, is to be the premier provider of innovative specialized services to ensure that each member district can meet the unique learning needs of its students. Our goals have been to ensure that each student has an academic goal and to ensure parents will be informed of student progress. I'm happy to say that 99% of students have an academic goal, with growth being demonstrated in the data. Going forward, 287 will continue consistent progress monitoring, as well as looking for where student growth can be communicated. Another goal was that 80% of Tier 2 elementary, middle, and academy school students will develop their own social, emotional learning goals. We have encouraged students to reflect on their learning and talk to educators should they need help. We are proud to say that we have exceeded this goal, with 90% of students developing their own social and emotional learning targets. This success affirms the merits of social emotional learning. Last year, I spoke to each of you about another goal that District 287 had set, which was to confront many of the barriers individuals might face in becoming teachers. With communities across the nation facing shortages of educators, District 287 sought an innovative approach to bring teaching opportunities to graduating seniors by creating the 2025 Extended School Year Internship. This opportunity provided a pathway to becoming an educator while giving an immersive experience. For example, interns joined current extended school year staff during orientation. Interns were trained in de-escalation and received the same hourly rate of pay as education support professionals. In the new year, I'm excited for 287's potential as the district strengthens the consistency in student goal monitoring and providing additional support to schools. Thank you, Intermediate District 287 and Wayzata Public Schools. I'm grateful for your collaboration in providing specialized services to students. You play a remarkable role in educating and improving the well-being of each and every family member and community member. While special services are experiencing headwinds like shortfalls in funding, please know your work does not go unseen, and we are very grateful for your service.
Thank you, Dan. Any comments, questions? Thank you for your participation. Thank you for the good work that 287 does, and thank you for everything that everybody does on that board. Okay.
I have one other item of note.
Yes.
That's very important tonight.
Yes.
Today is Sarah Johansson's.
Can I read? I will make a statement on that.
Sure. Why don't you not interrupt Heidi? We'll let her keep speaking.
Okay, go ahead.
So it is Sarah's last meeting tonight, last regular meeting. We don't know if something else could come up, right? But I just wanted to take some time and to say thank you, Sarah. So you've been here for 12 years. I've only had the opportunity to experience you for 4. But over the past 4 years, I've gotten to know you pretty well. And I'm very grateful to the way that you led, whether it was you as treasurer, you as chair, you know, out at HOCO with the football, you led consistently, with consistency. You led with kindness. You led with generosity. You led with intelligence and a strong voice. And I'm grateful that you have maintained that strong female voice on this board. I'm very grateful for that. You might have taken your last vote here tonight, but you are still going to be around. And I'm very excited for that. I'm excited for our kids to graduate together and to continue seeing you in our community. And I know you're going to continue giving, just in a very different way. So thank you for being who you are, and thank you for all of your service to this district. You are absolutely a leader that is befitting to Wayzata. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Heidi. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you to our administrators and Dr. Anderson. I can't imagine. It's been fun to be reflecting on the number of stories and things that have happened along this way. I think I started my journey on some cold days. So the first day that I was on the school board, nobody was in school, which my husband won't let me live down. But it's just been an honor. And so 12 years through changes of start times and the pandemic, and every thing that we do with students every day. No first grader gets another day in first grade on whatever day, and moving forward. And I would like to thank the district for allowing me. This has been the best job that I've had. And thank you to our community for trusting me and my colleagues in the work that we do. I'm honored to be a Wayzata parent. I'm honored to be a Wayzata graduate. And you're right, I'm not going anywhere. And I just look forward to the next chapter. So thank you.
Statement I was going to read. So Director Johansson will not be continuing as a board member in the next term. We recognize and appreciate her 12 years of service to this board, including 4 years as board chair. Board service requires a great deal of dedication, preparation, and perseverance, and we thank her for the time and effort she has invested in supporting the district and its students throughout her tenure. Thank you, Sarah. Is tomorrow, December 9th, weather cooperating. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but it's tomorrow, December 9th at 5:30 p.m. This concludes the Wayzata Public Schools regular board meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The time is now 9:25. The Wayzata Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting for Monday, December 8th, 2025 is adjourned.